The Tampa Bay Lightning were scheduled to have two preseason games over the weekend. They only played one, and frankly, I'm sure a lot of you wish they didn't even get to play that one. Locked On Lightning coming up next.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Lightning. We appreciate you making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. I am Josh Sperber, telling you that Locked On Lightning is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, this is the place for you. Josh Sperber here as we were talking about the preseason coming to a close. But before we get started, I first want to just wish everyone who is watching, especially if you're still in Tampa, just good safety and health in the wake of Hurricane Helene. Hope everyone is starting to get their belongings fixed and replaced and everything like that. And it just really hoping for positive things for the community of the greater Tampa Bay area after the devastating tropical storm. Before we get started on the Lightning team, the Lightning ownership deserves a massive shout out. Jeff Vinik announced on the 27th of September that he'll be donating $2 million to Hurricane Helene relief efforts. On the Lightning website, they've got links to the Red Cross, and they're just already doing their part and doing a great job to help out the impacted community. Really appreciate the Lightning Foundation stepping up for Tampa Bay and really, putting on for their community. Just another reason to love this Tampa Bay Lightning team. But there was no love for the Tampa Bay Lightning when they played in Nashville back on Saturday, a 6-0 victory by the Predators over the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Preds got 2 goals in the first, 4 in the second, but Tampa Bay in the third period actually outshot Nashville, getting 10 of their 23 shots in the game's final period to Nashville's 7. And the Hurricanes were actually the Predators, were actually playing some of their starters. Jonathan Marchessault got a goal and 2 assists. Their goalie, the Predators' goalie Saros, was able to get a shutout, making 23 saves on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Certainly not the full complement of starters for the Preds, but it was still the other team against the Tampa Bay Lightning's younger players. The Lightning still have not seen Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, Braden Point, Jake Gensel in a Lightning uniform yet in 2024. And that may change as the preseason games continue, as we are going to be moving into October by the time the next preseason game is played between Tampa and Nashville. Connor Geekie played almost 20 minutes of ice time, got 2 shots. The defenders, for the most part, were kind of gashed by that Predators offense, but the line of Emil Lilleberg and Nick Perbix were able to shut out the Predators in the 20 minutes or so that they were on the ice. So that's a nice positive, especially since we're going to be talking about the roster cut downs that the Lightning had to experience at this point. The first set of roster cuts, we'll talk about that a little bit in the next segment. Good to see Emil Lilleberg getting some hits. He was second on the team in hits to Steven Santini, who survived the first round of roster trimmings and led the way with 5 hits for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I mean, it's just a tough game. I mean, you hear the players talk about it in the post game as well. It's just not easy when you see 6 goals in the first 40 minutes of the game cross your net, and a nice home atmosphere for the Nashville Predators. Again, they're starting their big goalie. They're starting a couple of their starters. The Lightning are still playing guys who, for the most part, played primarily on either low Lightning lines or in the minor leagues last season. So Tampa's still not getting their more experienced skaters on in preseason. I think John Cooper's really kind of leaning into this whole rebuild aspect and trying to get some of his younger guys some more on-ice experience against the top-level competition that you want to see them face in the NHL really as soon as possible. I really like seeing Connor Geekie getting a whole lot of preseason minutes, and we're going to talk about him a bit more in the next segment as well, because I think he still has a shot to make the opening day roster for the Tampa Bay Lightning. The roster now at 35, obviously has to get to 23 by opening day. And Connor Geekie has made it very clear that he wants to be on that opening day roster for the Tampa Bay Lightning as well. Again, we're going to get to that in a little bit, but I mean, really, there just wasn't much to see for the Lightning against the Predators in that last one. There were only just a small handful of lines that really weren't scored on, but that third period is a nice positive, at least after getting beaten 6-0 in the first two periods of the games. The Lightning were able to win the shot battle in the third period. But one thing that has been plaguing the Lightning through really the entirety of this camp process, this preseason process, is the lack of power play goals and the losing faceoffs. The Lightning only in one game won the faceoff battle, and that was against the Florida Panthers, who they will be playing later tonight. But this was their worst faceoff discrepancy of the entire preseason. Nashville won over 62% of the faceoffs. Neither team got a power play goal, and it's great to see that the Lightning penalty kill has been good. But Nashville got their last goal on a Lightning power play. Tampa with 5 power plays, no goals. They are 2 for 10 on power plays in 3 games in the preseason so far. John Cooper stressed in the offseason that he wanted the Lightning power play to be one of the best in the league. I think that is still possible, but you still have to get some of your big guys out there. I don't mind not seeing Vasilevsky in the preseason. They need to keep him healthy this year, but I would be honestly pretty surprised if the Lightning get a home game at Scripps against the Florida Panthers and we don't see Nikita Kucherov or Victor Hedman. I really want to see them debut for this season in front of the home fans, particularly Hedman with that brand new Captain C on his jersey. I would love to see him touch the ice for the first time as a Lightning captain in the preseason in front of the Tampa Bay Lightning home fans. I think it's a perfect idea to do it against the Florida Panthers, one of the Lightning's big rivals and the Stanley Cup champions. Like, that's the kind of team that you want to get to. That's the level that you want to get to this season. And Tampa played Florida very well in the last preseason game. That's something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But I really think that at this point, we've seen some of these younger guys. Now we're getting closer to getting the actual roster down. 12 more players at the least need to be either released or sent to one of the minor league teams for the Lightning as we get ready for the season that is just around the corner. You know, in about a week and a half, the Lightning will play their first regular season game against the Carolina Hurricanes, and there's still 12 more guys at the minimum that need to get cut off of the Lightning's roster. And I think there is a roadmap for how that can happen. There's certainly some guys that I can already see getting sent down, as we'll talk in the next segment. But I mean, this was just a dominant game from Nashville on that Saturday. Lightning had to cancel their Friday game. It's going to be postponed until October 7th, though that is not officially populated, I don't believe, on the Tampa Bay schedule online. But again, Friday's game was canceled due to the hurricane. There it is, October 7th, 7 p.m. at Amalie Arena. Lightning versus Predators. That is going to be the postponed game from the Friday cancellation. But I mean, really, that was the most positive part of this series against Lightning. I do like seeing the better shot output. They had almost half of their shots in that final period, but the Lightning really needed to work on those power play, take advantage of some of the shorthanded opportunities. I think defensively, I'll be a lot less worried when I start seeing Victor Hedman and Ryan McDonough, Eric Cernak, some of the more vets on the Lightning defense in the lineup and getting out on the ice in preseason. I'm hoping that is going to quell some of my defensive concerns with this Lightning team, because the last 2 games that they played, they allowed 13 goals. And granted, I think the Panthers and Predators are going to be 2 of the best teams in the NHL this season. I hate to say that about the Panthers, but you got to give the Cup winners just a little bit of respect. Keyword on a little there when it comes to the Florida Panthers. But I think getting some of those starters to kind of, bring a bigger leadership presence on to the Lightning defense, I think that's really going to help. And it's still important to get those guys a little bit of run before the regular season. But they're still trying to see who they're going to have to send to the AHL. So I'd like to see, once the Lightning get back to their home ice, I'd like to start seeing some of their first liners get some playing time and get into the game during preseason. But I mean, really, especially on defense, a lot needs to change for the Tampa Bay Lightning. A 6-0 defeat, preseason or not, is just not something you want to see on a hockey team. So hopefully that is something the Lightning can fix when they take on the Florida Panthers on Monday. That will be over at Scripps. Their next home game at Amalie Arena, though, will be against Nashville on Monday, October 7th. They've got one. The next two games are against the Florida Panthers. We'll talk about them a little bit more in the next segment. But next, we're going to talk about the roster crunches that were made the other day by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, one of my favorite things to do is go to live events, whether I'm working them or just attending as a fan. It is just, I mean, there's nothing better than going to a live game. And the best place to find good, cheap tickets is on Gametime. They've got a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets a whole lot easier for all of your favorite live events, including Tampa Bay Lightning games. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Gametime has a Labor Day offer for Diamondbacks Dodgers, where you get 50% off of select tickets there if you're a baseball fan and if that is where you live. But they've got plenty of deals when it comes to Tampa Bay Lightning and other hockey games as well. The Lightning, though, if you download the Gametime app, you take the guesswork out of buying tickets. And if you download the app, make an account, you can use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, make an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, capital LOCKED, capital ON, capital N, capital H, capital L. That will give you $20 off on tickets, and it's a pretty darn good deal. If you download Gametime today to get the best deals on tickets for live events. What time is it? Gametime. Josh Sperber back for the second segment here on Locked On Lightning. And as is kind of customary at this point, the first couple weeks of training camp have ended. Preseason is well underway. So some of the roster was cut down by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay transferred a total of 9 players to the AHL affiliate, the Syracuse Crunch. Dylan Duke, Jaden Dereau, Lucas Edmonds, Dylan Gill, Nico Huhtinen, Milo Rollins, Roman Schmidt, Lucas Svejkovsky, and Gabriel Sturck have been transferred to AHL. They also released a handful of players, including goalkeeper Brennan Halverson, who dressed for that Predators game on Saturday, Jan Golicic, Ethan Hay, among guys that were released from the training camp roster, and a whole lot of cuts, cutting the roster down to 35 players with a max at 23. 12 more players must be either released or sent to the minor leagues before opening day. And I think there is a couple of guys who I can see going down. But first, some of the big surprises. Jaden Dereau was spectacular in the preseason. 3 assists in that game against Carolina. I really thought Lucas Svejkovsky was going to survive the first round of cuts, but I mean, there is just not room on him in a very deep offensive roster for the Tampa Bay Lightning. All the 9 guys that I mentioned will be transferred to the AHL of Syracuse, so some really solid forwards there. Nico Huhtinen was someone who I thought would get a bit more of a run, but again, with his youth, I don't think it's a bad idea to send him down to the AHL. Gabriel Sturck as well, someone who was kind of angling for a roster spot. And, you know, these are guys that I think are going to help Syracuse get off to a solid start this season. And there's offensively where a lot of these cuts were concentrated is where the Lightning had the most of their players. They still have 20 offensive players, 12 defensive players on their preseason roster with 3 goalkeepers. I think the goalie is going to be the easiest when it comes to cuts in the rest of the season. I imagine it'll be Jonas Johansson and Andrei Vasilevsky, the 2 netminers on the active roster when we start the season in Tampa. Defenders, I still think there are a couple guys that are going to be sent down. Emil Lilleberg is an interesting situation because he has been kind of inconsistent so far this preseason, but he's had a really solid last couple of games after a tough game number 1 against Carolina, where he was on the ice for both goals being scored, but he's really rebounded. He was able to get 3 shots in the game against Nashville and was second on the team with 3 hits. So he's really showing his physicality on the defensive side. And honestly, I like the idea of him being a third-line defender for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think he's going to end up getting cut, but defensively is where I think the harder cuts are going to have to be, because a guy like Tobe Paquette-Bisson might have to be sent back down to the AHL after he's had a really, really solid preseason. Steven Santini as well might be destined for the AHL. Could say the same about Declan Carlisle and Max Crozer. But some of the really interesting potential movements, of course, are in the forward line. Michael Eyssimont will start the season on the injured list, most likely. And I believe that is the same for Luke Glendening, though, again, there is a chance that he can play in the opening day. That is the goal. He is hopeful, to get on the Lightning's opening day roster. He might have a little bit of injury, and that is one of the things that can open up for a guy like Connor Geekie, who has been as advertised. He has been crucial in the offense for Tampa Bay Lightning. A couple goals, including the game winner against Florida with 2 seconds left. I find it difficult to demote a guy after he does that. One game or not, it's not easy to score a goal in the final seconds of the game. Defense all over you, and Geekie has really stepped up and showed that he is a blue chip prospect, as Julien Brisebois called him. So he still has a shot to make that Lightning opening day roster. Again, with the state of the Lightning right now, with kind of an uncertain present, with just a very new team, I would be pretty surprised if Connor Geekie did make the opening day roster, simply because, he has the eligibility to be sent back down to the minor leagues. And I don't think that they're going to want to rush him. This is one of the better prospects that Tampa Bay has had in a very long time. And I think they would be smart to play it safe with him. Yeah, could he be an NHL player right now? I think so. I mean, he's playing against primarily backups in preseason, so that's not getting the kind of run that you would expect. But I think Connor Geekie is a legitimate NHL talent. However, the Lightning do have a lot of centers. Zemgus Girgensson is a guy who could be competing for that final center spot. Gage Gonzalez is someone who a lot of people expected to make the Lightning opening day roster, and he is certainly one of those guys who expects that, but he's been pretty quiet in the preseason so far, and that's really opened the doors for guys like Connor Geekie as well. So he is someone that has really turned into a question mark in terms of coming into that opening day roster. I think Ethan Gauthier is going to be sent down, Gabriel Fortier as well, Jack Finley, who is a bit injured, likely to start the season in the AHL, especially with that injury. Mitchell Chaffee might go down as well. I mean, but it's just, a lot of guys for not too many roster spots. And I think we might start getting a better idea. Like I mentioned, I certainly expect once they're back on home ice, the Tampa Bay Lightning to start putting guys like Kucherov and Victor Hedman and maybe even Vasilevsky and Braden Point and definitely Jake Gensel, who I still think needs to be getting a lot more preseason run than he does, as this is his first year with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Cameron Atkinson, the same kind of way. These are guys that I really want to see, Atkinson and Gensel especially. But, I mean, there's just so much youth on this Lightning roster, which really gives them a lot of options and a lot of questions on who to keep up and who to send down to the AHL. In terms of offense, I think Michael Eyssimont, again, he's likely to get back to the Lightning roster, but he's going to start the year on the injured list, according to the general manager, Julien Brisebois. He'll be out until September. So he might start injured, but still on the Lightning roster. And I think there's Maxime Groshev, another guy who's going to get sent down. But Jesse Lonen is another interesting one because he's a name you haven't heard called that much in preseason, signed from Montreal. He might get sent down to the AHL as well, just simply to make room. So, I mean, it's still kind of a toss-up. Connor Geekie is still very much in the running to get on the Tampa Bay Lightning's opening day roster. I imagine he's going to be probably the last player cut. Once it's down to 24, Connor Geekie will probably still be on that Lightning roster, but I still believe he's going to start the season in the AHL and then eventually work his way onto the Tampa Bay Lightning squad. I still believe that Connor Geekie makes his NHL debut in 2025. So he'll probably start with Syracuse, as spectacular as he's been this preseason. But, once the season's more sorted out, once the Lightning kind of have a better idea of where they might end up sitting in terms of their playoff chances, I think that they can bring Connor Geekie up, especially if it gets to a point in the season. If the rebuild just goes really sideways for the Tampa Bay Lightning, which I don't think is going to happen, I still think the Lightning are going to be able to challenge for the playoff spot this season, but I don't think Connor Geekie will be part of that initial push at the start of the season. But he did survive the first round of cuts, and for someone that was just added to the roster at the beginning of the year, that is certainly a big positive. And I think Connor Geekie has maybe even exceeded expectations in the preseason. That being said, I am not sure that he will be around for the first game of the NHL season. But this will be the second preseason game where the Lightning take on their rival Florida Panthers. It was an absolute barn burner the last time these two teams played last week on September the 25th. Lightning won the game 8-7, including 5 goals in the third period. Their next matchup comes later tonight at Scripps. We will preview that after a word from our sponsors. Now, I might not be a big-time sports bettor, but I know all of my friends who bet on games use FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel yourself, which is America's #1 sportsbook. When you do get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first bet of just $5. That is FanDuel.com. We'll have updated odds on FanDuel when the NHL season does get started. But if you are looking to place some bets in the preseason or during the NHL season, FanDuel is the place to go. The last segment of Locked On Lightning is still preseason related. Tampa Bay coming off a big loss to Nashville, but their lone win of the preseason came against the Florida Panthers at the home of their ECHL affiliate, the Orlando Solar Bears, at the Kia Center in Orlando. Now, a couple guys that really did make an impact for the Tampa Bay Lightning were among the players that have already been sent down to the AHL. Gabriel Sturck is no longer on the Lightning preseason roster. He had an assist and a plus or minus of +2. You had Maxime Groshev is still there. I'd like to see him get some more work because he's certainly angling for a roster spot after some spectacular training camps over the last 2 years. They're losing a goal and assist from David Duke, and they're also losing a goal from Nico Huhtinen, as well as Jaden Dureau, who was one of, if not the best, Dylan Duke, is down. He had a goal and assist, but Jaden Dureau was one of, if not the best offensive players in that last matchup between the Lightning and the Florida Panthers. He had 3 assists, which led all passers on the night in both teams. No one else had more than 2 assists, and he is down. So, that changes things up a little bit. But again, it gives more room for guys like Jake Gensel and Cameron Atkinson to start getting into the game. These are guys who have, been with the Lightning roster, obviously, during the preseason, but they haven't factored much in the games. And now is the time. You're starting to get the roster closer to NHL season ready. Now is the time that you want to start testing out some of your starters, some of your key players with some of the bench players on the Lightning. I would love to see Connor Geekie play with Jake Gensel or Nikita Kucherov. Obviously, I think if they play, Braden Point will play and you'll get that first round to go. But still, I want to see Connor Geekie play with guys that are potentially going to be on the Lightning opening day roster. Put him on a line with maybe Brandon Hagel or Cirelli or Nick Paul or Connor Sheary. It definitely doesn't just help get the regular starters acclimated. The veterans, you can talk about all you want, how veterans don't need to play too much in preseason. You want to save them, making sure that they're not going to get injured or anything like that. But, Yes, they still have to just get their feet underneath them. And no matter how good you are, even if you're a Victor Hedman or a Nikita Kucherov, who are probably going to go down as two of the best, if not the best, at their position over the course of this NHL season, you still want to get them loose. You still want to get them active and get back into the swing of things and hitting opponents and scoring against other goalies instead of the guys that you practice against every day. So I think the Florida Panthers are a perfect opportunity to get some of those starters out there because they're your rivals. There's the Stanley Cup champions. You got to show them that kind of respect and hit them with some of your starters. I'd love to see a preseason, even if preseason games don't really count on the scoreboard in the records or the standings, whatever. You still want to show the defending champs that kind of respect. Plus, if the Lightning can say in preseason can come into the regular season after a preseason win with the majority of the guys that are going to be in the AHL to start the season and fewer veterans, fewer of their regular contributors, you have that preseason victory already. Now take it to them. Send Nikita Kucherov out there and have him just turn the Panthers inside out. Send Victor Hedman out there and have him deck some guys on your rival team. Like, this is the time, I think, to start getting some of the starters out there. But I promise this is going to be the last time you'll hear me yelling about that this week. Well, no, you might have Wednesday too, because they've got another home game at Scripps against the Florida Panthers before their final Amalie Arena preseason game on Monday the 7th, which I'm sure they'll have most of their regular starters out for that one. But I'm not saying put in Vasilevsky. I'm not saying put in everyone for 20 minutes or whatever their regular NHL ice time is going to be. But I am saying it is time to see what this Tampa Bay Lightning team is about. It is time to put some of the heavy hitter guys in there to, really show the NHL that just because they lost Stamkos, they're still a force to be reckoned with. This is still a team that you have to respect. This is still a team that won back-to-back championships around 5 years ago. So I'd like to see some of the starters. I'd really, honestly, though, more important than anything, I want to see Cam Atkinson and Jake Gensel get into the game. Same line, different lines, just mixing them around, whatever, fine. Those are two guys that are going to be important factors in the Lightning season. Atkinson's primarily a right winger and expected to be someone who can really contribute on the power play, according to some of the Lightning coaches when they discussed his addition in the offseason. Jake Gensel is maybe the most crucial player to the Tampa Bay Lightning this season. He's filling in for a marquee position and replacing a franchise legend. We've talked about this throughout pretty much the entire preseason. He hasn't seen a minute of ice time in the preseason. And yeah, he's a vet. He's been in the league for close to 10 years. He's played with two Hall of Fame guys in Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby. We know Jake Gensel is a talented player, but regardless of the fact that he has been so easily able to adjust to these new situations. He had 25 points in 17 games with the Carolina Hurricanes last year and was very effective for them in the postseason as well. We know that he can adjust and adapt, but show it. Put your money where your mouth is when it comes to Gensel. 7-year contract extension, and after the first 3, supposed to be 4 games of preseason, he still hasn't seen ice time. I want to see how he gels with the Tampa Bay Lightning guys, even if it's going to be with Kucherov and Point on his line. Fine. Cam Atkinson, too. These are two guys that need to be key to the Tampa Bay Lightning's attack in the offseason, and I would really like to see them start getting some run in the preseason. Whether that happens this game or a week from now against Nashville at Amalie Arena, I just think it's just about time where the Lightning can start edging in some of their guys. I mean, you saw with the Predators, Marchessault is one of their key offensive players. They had their starting goalie play all 60 minutes of the game, and he recorded a shutout against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, other teams have started to do it, and obviously different teams run things in different ways. I think that, getting these guys out against the Panthers, against a rival team, against a defending Stanley Cup champion team, I think it's important to start showing the league what you're really about and really just put some more pressure on the other guys when they start seeing that first line, because a full strength line, a solid chemistry line of Gensel, Point, and Kucherov could be one of the better first lines in the NHL this season. But they still haven't seen too much ice time together. So it's time to start getting some of the starters out there, whether it's the full regular lines, whether it's just them mixing in with some of the younger guys to show them the ropes a little bit. Either way, I think at this point in the preseason, we're less than 2 weeks out from the start of the NHL season. I think that it is time to start getting your key contributors some time on the ice in preseason and start working them in to see how this Lightning attack can go in the 2024-2025 season. We'll be finishing up for tonight's game, but again, I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Locked On Lightning and making this Locked On Lightning podcast your first listen every day, and especially today. Now, for your second listen, go find Locked On NHL, where the local experts keep you updated daily on all the biggest storylines ahead of the upcoming season. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you again for tuning in. My name is Josh Sperber, and I just want to, again, give everyone, especially those affected by Hurricane Helene in the Tampa Bay area, my absolute best wishes. Look on the Red Cross online. There are so many ways to help out. And hopefully, if you can, do your part. And if you are just in need of assistance, I mean, you know, the group here with Locked On Lightning is behind you. We wish everyone the best for safe returns and safe recovery from Hurricane Helene. And hopefully the Tampa Bay Lightning will be able to kind of help with some of these tough times by putting together a really solid product on the ice this season. We'll recap the Panthers game tomorrow, but until then, please stay safe. Best wishes to everyone recovering from the hurricane, and go Bolts.